Hey everyone, how's it going? Welcome to another Houdini tutorial. Now before we get to the actual video, I just wanted to take a moment and mention that if you want to support me and support the channel, you can actually buy some of my NFTs. I'm minting my pieces on the Tezos blockchain, which is pretty cheap and environmental friendly. So they are not expensive at all. In fact, the formation piece is 2 Tezos and the Willemite crystal is 3 Tezos. Each Tezos, I think, right now is about $4. I'm not sure. So yeah, if you want to support me, it will help me a lot because creating videos is not my day job and I kind of have to find the time between my projects or when I'm waiting for my scenes to render, which is, for example, right now, as I'm sitting here waiting for my cache. So I just decided to record this video. And yeah, if you want to support me, it will help me a lot. It would mean a lot to me. There are editions. So for example, this piece has 15 editions. I think 9 editions are now available. And let me see here. Yeah, 9 editions are on the marketplace. The crystal only has 1 edition on the marketplace, but I'm still keeping like 5. So I can definitely add more. I'm also collecting stuff. In fact, I recently collected this piece by Tim J Design. Tim is a great friend and a great artist. So I would encourage you to go buy his NFT as well. And also, if you have anything cool, I'd love to see it. And I'm interested in buying NFTs as well. So let me know. Okay. Let's get to the video. Now, one of the pieces that has been requested a lot recently is the infected system. Let me just mute this. And so we're going to create this today. It's going to be a pretty, I'm hoping a pretty fast tutorial. So let's just see how it goes. I don't think we're going to do any shading because it's not really complicated at all. I'm going to share some stuff with you just so you know how we can do it. And also depending on when I post this, we also might have another episode of the how-to series, which is going to be scientific visualization. I had Kate Zagoraris on the channel and we talked about science, scientific visualization, and a lot of interesting stuff. So yeah, please check that out. Okay, let's get to the video. I'm gonna use a geometry here for our tutorial, and you can actually go to 3dscans.com. These are all free objects. In fact, if you remember from one of our previous videos, we used this one. For this video, I'm gonna be using this, I don't know what it is, this Jaguar or I don't know. We're gonna use this one, whatever it is. Let me up my scene as well because I want to see what I'm doing. There we go. Let's place down a geometry node. Let's place down a file, and I'm just gonna load it. Now, most of the time when you load objects from 3D scans, or in fact anywhere else, they're going to be kind of weird, distorted. Maybe the orientation is not correct. This is usually because of the method that they used for the 3D scan. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put down 2 nodes, match axis and match size. Now these 2 are actually very helpful. I'm gonna go to the match axis and I'm gonna say, let me actually save this one real quick. Tutorials. Didn't I already save this one? I guess not. No worries. Infected system, and I'm gonna call it infected tutorial. So match axis, we have from vector 0, 1, 0, and we're gonna say -1. So immediately we see the orientation is correct. Now let's go to the match size. We're gonna say justify Y to minimum. So it's gonna sit on the ground. In fact, you can also offset it if you want, go up and down. But the scale is too big right now. And the thing is, you can scale it to whatever value you like. In fact, there's like a target size in here. You can say scale to fit. It's gonna go be very small. In fact, it will be the biggest, essentially the biggest axis is going to be 1, the way it's set up here. You can actually set it to be like, you want your X direction to be 1, which is what's you can see right now. You can go with Y, you can go with Z direction. I'm just going to leave it as best fit, but I'm not going to use 1, 1, 1. I'm going to use 3.5, I think. Yeah, in my experiments, bigger values with the way this setup works are kind of better. You're free to just experiment with whatever number you like. Now, we have a lot of details in here, and we're going to use this geometry for the render, but I just prefer using a little bit of a less denser geometry for our simulation. So, VDB from Polygon, that's the old friend, and I'm gonna set it to 0.008. These values, I just experimented with them, so I know they work, but you're free to go with higher resolution if, in fact, lower resolution. If it's slow, you can go to like 0.1, 0.15. I mean, I guess this is too small, but 0.05 might work. 0.01 might also be fine, but I'm gonna go with 0.008, and I'm gonna convert VDB, set it to be polygons, and we have our geometry, but it's still pretty dense. So 500,000. This was about 1 million. So I'm gonna also put down a remesh node. Now, the remesh sub is pretty slow, so I'm not the biggest fan of it, but we're gonna use it right now. I'm gonna also show you an alternative. So let's use adaptive, and I'm gonna set these two values. Just waiting for this thing to load. Okay, so for the relative density, I'm gonna put down, let me also manual because it's going to be super slow. I'm going to put down 1 in here and also 1 in the second one. So I'm going to set it to on mouse up. It's a better method, I think, because then when you're changing something, it won't constantly load it. As you can see, this is actually much better now. We won't use this one for our render because if you look here, there's just so much more resolution, and it's just better. But for our purposes, and in fact for the simulation, I think this is pretty good. All right. Now, as an alternative, there's a node called Fast Remesh, and it's not available by default, but it was available in side effects competition they did a while ago. I'm not sure where it was. I think it was called Tech Art, if I'm not mistaken. Tech Art, was it? Let's just see. Tech. Should be able to find it. Tech Art Challenge, yes. So if you want to download these, you can go to the forum. I think it's in one of these categories, but let's just go to the forum itself and best utility entries. And if you scroll down here, pretty much near the end, I think this one, the Fast Remesh. It's an amazing node. I'm hoping the Labs tools will actually load this one because it's just amazing. Now, when you go to it, you just bring this one up, and as you can see, it's pretty fast. You set the target length, and just it's great. And there are sims, and if you don't like it, you can just check this one, and it remeshes everything. And as you can see, it's a great way of remeshing stuff. I'm not gonna include this one in the scene file because I'm not sure if I can share it, but you can just go there and download it. We're gonna go with our normal remesh. All right, so we're gonna use some Pyro techniques. Actually, we've used similar techniques before in the Willemite crystal tutorial, but I'm just gonna walk you through it again. So first things first, we are gonna create a Pyro source. Let's place it right here. We're gonna we're not gonna keep the input. Let's go with surface scatter. It's more uniform because if you look at it, for example, you can see there are some points that are closer to each other. You can go ahead with this one as well. It's just I prefer surface. You can also go with volume scatter for normal stuff, but let's just go with surface. And for our separation, I'm gonna put down 0.025. I think it's a good value. I'm gonna create the hit this plus button, create the temperature. I'm gonna set the value to be 0. Now we're gonna work with temperature in a moment. Let's scatter some points. Now essentially the way it works is I'm creating these particles in here. I'm setting the temperature attribute, but it's gonna be equal to 0. Now usually when we work like this, we're gonna put down a Pyro spread, and the Pyro spread is a simulation. If you have a temperature value, it's gonna use that and do something with it. For example, burn your scene. Well, we don't have any values in here. In fact, let me just put the scale to 0 as well. There we go. Now, if you have a temperature attribute, it's going to be red in here. In fact, if I bring it up, it should be, I think since it's just one value, it's not showing it. Let me check real quick. There we go. So this is like the temperature, but we don't want to work like this. What we want to do is we want to pick some of these and give them the temperature so they spread. We don't want it to be on the whole geometry. So the way I'm going to do that, I have my points in here. I'm going to bring it down. I'm going to disconnect this for the time being. I'm going to scatter a bunch of points. Now you can be very exact, place them by hand. I'm just going to do something random. Let's see. I'm going to place 9 points maybe. Yeah, that's fine. So what I'm going to do next, I'm going to put down a sphere. And I'm going to copy this sphere to these points. So CTP, copy to points. Now they're pretty huge. So we're going to make them smaller. Now I'm going to put down an attribute randomize. I'll randomize the p-scale attribute. Bring it down and fit it between 0.05 and 0.1. Now, alternatively, you can also use adjust float, which is probably better because it has a lot of options, including the random. And by default, it puts p-scale. So, in fact, let's just use this one. So 0.05 and 0.1. There we go. Now, next up, we're going to create a group. I'm going to say group. I'm going to change it to be points. I'm going to call it, I don't know, I guess B-box, since we're going to use bounding regions. And we're going to switch it to bounding object, and we're going to connect this one. So now we're selecting these points. I'm going to put down a wrangle. You can also put down an attribute create. It doesn't matter. I'm going to select this group. I'm going to say @sign temperature is equal to 1. So now when I visualize this temperature, actually see some of them have this value of 1. So let's connect it to the Pyro spread now. let's visualize the burn. You can just go through these and visualize the one attribute that you want. When we play, we start to see something, but then it dies out pretty quickly. So let's dial in some settings. Now, first things first, I'm gonna play with this cooling rate. So let's say 0.3. When I play it now, you can see we're actually seeing something, but it's not enough. It's kind of boring, I think. You can also visualize temperature if it helps better. Yeah, maybe this one's better. Okay, so let's go to diffusion. Now, the diffusion is sort of like how it's gonna burn. So diffusion rate, we're gonna switch this one. I like alligator noise. There we go, it's pretty cool. I'm gonna bring this one a little bit forward, as you can see. And by the way, you can actually see the effect of this on mouse up right here. So if I put it to auto update, you can see whenever I move it, you can see what's happening. But if you put it to on mouse up, when you stop it, you get to see it. Now, it might not be so useful right now, but if you're doing something very heavy, it becomes very helpful, because you might want to go between values and you actually have something specific in mind. So I'm going to leave it somewhere here, and I'm going to bring this one, well, maybe to here. Yeah, that looks good. Element size 0.5, and for element scale also I'm going to bring it to 0.5, so small. And I think that's pretty good. Let's look at the temperature now. Very, very interesting. Okay, but it's still a little bit fast for me. So what I like to do, it's a kind of a trick, but I put down an attribute warp, I jump inside. Now here's the thing, we have this burn attribute. This node by default puts out a bunch of attributes. In fact, these are the stuff that we are visualizing in here. We're going to work with the burn attribute. It's here. And it's going to show how much of this thing is actually burned or infected. So I'm going to bind my burn attribute. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to actually multiply it. So let's put down a multiply. I'm going to put a noise on it. So our position, I'm gonna put a noise and connect it here, and connect it not to P actually, bind export and connect it back to burn. So sucks now because it's just too small. You gotta dial it up. So I dialed it up to these values. So for amplitude, I used 17.8. I brought down this roughness to 0.082, and I also changed the frequency to 5.9. These are just values I experimented with. And when we play it now, you can see it's actually really interesting. But here's the thing. We're multiplying this by a huge number now. And when we go to our geometry spreadsheet, our burn, it's actually pretty big. We don't want that. We want 0 and 1. So let's just clamp it. This way it's going to be between 0 and 1. So still has the same effect. It's just between 0 and 1 now. Great. So let's put down a group expression. And in here, we're gonna select these. So let's say, you can put whatever name you want. I'm gonna say infected. I'm gonna say sign burn is equal to 1. Let's select it. So these are our points, and we're gonna just blast them out. Blast the infected and delete non-select. So these are our starting points. Now I'm gonna clean our setup now. Make sure uncheck this unused points, because, and also this one, the remove degenerate primitives, because we want to keep our points, and just check these two. So now we don't have any attributes. Clean. Let's put down a popnet. Now we need to actually come back here and change something, but let's just keep it like this. Also, we had a p-scale attribute. Since we're cleaning our setup, now we don't have the p-scale attribute. I'm actually gonna put this caret symbol and say p-scale, because I want to preserve the p-scale in case we need it, because right now it would be equal to 0 if I don't do it. But overall, we usually actually don't include this one. Let's just keep it for now. We're gonna see some problems. We're gonna come back. The only reason I'm keeping it is because you might forget this clean. So let's just go without the clean, and then we're gonna come back to it. Yeah, that's better. So let's create our stuff. This one. Okay. So let's just start from the top. I have a bunch of points. What I'm gonna do is I actually learned this trick from Base Geo Studio, and if you wanna check his tutorials, it's great. You definitely should. In fact, he actually takes a similar approach. It just I think he uses PC find, but it's pretty much the same. I think his method is harder, so this is a pretty easy version of kind of similar stuff. So let's put down pop grain, and we are gonna change some stuff in here. First of all, assume uniform radius. We don't need that. Clumping, we need that. And I think that's it. I don't think we need anything else. So let's just play it right now. Now we're creating points on top of each other. And also I'm gonna set this one to all points. There we go. Now, they are clumping, but it's terrible. So how do we fix that? One thing that we need to do right here is setting the velocity to 0 on each frame. So v at v, you don't actually need to say it's a vector, just you can say at sign v equal to 0. Let's play it. We're getting something, but it's uniform. It's because we have this p-scale attribute up there. Now, if I set the p-scale to 0, at sign p-scale equals to 0, this problem will be resolved, but then we won't see anything. But if you turn on this number in here and see that we are actually placing points on top of each other. So p-scale is equal to 0, but we're putting them on top. So that's why I put down the clean. You don't need to say p-scale equals to 0, and we don't need to actually exclude it either. You can connect it directly, and it will still give you the same results. The only thing is it's equal to 0, so essentially the same thing. Let me just a little bit nicer. Yep. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna add something to the p-scale. I'm gonna do it before the sign p-scale. I'm gonna say p-scale plus equals and a value like 0.001. Let's check it out. Working now, great. But then it's growing to infinity, so we need to clamp it. So sign p-scale equals to clamp at sign p-scale, and we need two values. So I went with 0 and 0.01. So essentially it starts from 0. We add 0.001 each frame, and when we get to 0.01 we're gonna stop. Now when we play it, we're gonna grow up, but then they're gonna pretty much stay in the same spot. Great. Now we're pretty much done in here. The only thing is if I actually come out here and let's see, let's add a null down here from our for our object. Let's just merge these two together. Now if you go inside, there's no collision. So let's make it collide with our statue. Put down a merge in here. And I'm also gonna bring out line. I'll put down another merge because I also want to include a ground. So let's put a static object. Also, let's put down ground object, ground plane. Let's merge them together. There we go. And make sure you're not connecting them like this. It will kind of fail. It's not how Houdini likes it. The order operations matter. You should either put it like this or come here and say mutual relationship should be, there we go, mutual. So both work fine. So if it's like this and it's set to mutual, it's fine, but I kind of prefer using it like this. So we have ground, and then we want to add our collision. So for ground, 0.15 I think worked. Let's just check it out with our object as well, but let's also bring our object. So we need to put down some nulls. Now, I'm going to use this remesh for our collider. So out, call it call. Let's copy this, dive inside, and paste it in the subpath. There we go. And when we play it, we start to see something. If you go inside, it's still, as you can see, they're going inside. And one way that you can actually visualize this is go to collisions, uncheck display geometry, and check the collision guide. And as you can see, this is the actual collider that we have in here, which is terrible. Now, one thing that you can do is you can just bring this up, go to the first frame, and you start to see something, but it's still not really good. So what's the best way to do this is actually using a volume. Now we already have this VDB up here, so I'm just gonna bring another null. You don't need to bring nulls, but I mean you should, because you need to stay organized. So I'm gonna call this one out, call vol. So copy this one, go inside. Now if you scroll down here, you see a proxy volume. I'm going to paste this one, but nothing really happens. You need to come up here and say volume sample. And now we actually see our object. It's so much better. Okay, now you shouldn't keep this one on because it will slow this down quite a lot. As you can see, I'm actually playing it right now, but it's super slow. You can uncheck this. You can visualize your geometry, and when you play it, it's actually pretty fast. Great, it looks really cool. And also it's not really going here, but when we play it, you start to see some weird stuff happening. In fact, maybe will be visible on the inside. Probably if you look around, you're gonna see some problems, even though we have this collider. And let me actually uncheck the guides here. There we go. So yeah, there are some stuff down there. In fact, you can also uncheck this and see it right here. It's not perfect. So how can we fix that? My solution is to actually come up here when we're scattering the points. Now I'm just gonna clip my geometry. It's pretty easy, but it's actually pretty helpful. Now I placed my ground on 0.15, so I'm just gonna use the same value. In fact, I'm gonna copy this parameter, dive inside my popnet, and place it in here as well. So they're gonna be related to each other. Now, another thing that I'm gonna do is I'm also gonna connect my Pyro source to my clip. So this way, my object is actually clipped. It's not the full geometry. So now I don't have to worry about my points going under this particular surface that I put there, and there are like some seeds that would have gone down there. Because right now it looks pretty good, but playing with our global seed, you might come across something that you don't like. This way, you're just cutting anything beneath that. So let's go back to our PubNet. Now we're going to play it, and it's going to be much better. In fact, we're not seeing anything down here, and we're just going to go around. Yep, nothing. Great. Let's just let it play, and I'm going to take a sip of water. There we go. So I think around here is just fine. Let it do more frames. Okay. And also you can just increase these values. You can increase your cache size. Probably this would be better. So let's just simulate it. I'm gonna stop around 72, which I think is pretty much like this best frame for us. Now, also I forgot to name this one, so I'm gonna call it out statue, because this was coming from our actual geometry. It's gonna be the render geometry for our statue. Let's merge. So one problem, we're actually seeing this static object here, so I'm just gonna come here and say pop and this asterisk sign, so see that anymore. If you want to see that, you can just merge these two together. Now, next thing that I'm gonna do, in fact, let's just merge it. Well, for rendering stuff, we need to actually disconnect it, especially with Redshift, since we're gonna render points. But if you want to see geometry right now, you can actually put down a sphere. I would recommend using a primitive because it gets pretty heavy pretty fast. And use a copy to points, and there you go. Now you have geometry. Oh, we're not going to render it like this. So let's do something cool. Let's add some color. I'm going to put down attribute, adjust color. I think it's a new node. I think they introduced this one in 19, or maybe it was one of the last builds of 18.5. Let's actually check that real quick. It help tool, and it was introduced in 19. Yep. So we're gonna come here. We're gonna say let's remap an attribute. Now, I'm gonna use the age attribute, which we're getting from our PubNet, but I'm not gonna use this range. I'm gonna use 0 to 4 because it's just interesting. Or you can actually use 0 to 5. It will be pretty much like in the middle. I think 0 to 4 is better, but let's use one of these presets. Let's use Twilight. That's pretty cool. And I would recommend not using the geometry, as I mentioned, make it slow. Let's just use the points directly. We're going to keep this one as a visualizing help tool, but let's just wait for this thing to go forward a little bit. Perhaps frame 120 would play. There we go. That's cool. Okay, we're pretty much done in here. Let me just stop the simulation. And I guess we can wait for 170 frames just to see how it would. There we go. It was super bright, but I think it works. And we're probably just gonna end somewhere anyway. So we're gonna remove this merge. We're gonna add a null, call it out grains, maybe. Copy this, go out here, another geo, jump inside, object merge, paste it. Now, I made the mistake of not naming these, so let's also name them. But the thing is, this one is gonna get destroyed. Our cache will be gone. because we're changing the name, and I'm gonna call this one statue. You can also call it setup if it's easier for you to follow this way, because all our setup is inside here. This is just for rendering. I have to wait for this remesh as well. Okay, so pretty much have everything. One thing that you can do is also include a grid. Merge these two together and put down a null. Say out render. Yep. You can also put down output node in here, so that even if you're like or else, when you jump out here, it would automatically load the output. This is in fact what happens inside a PopNet or any other simulation. We have this. Oh, it doesn't really matter. So let's just simulate one more time and see what happens. I think somewhere around here is fine. Let's set this to show all objects. I'm gonna go to render. Very pretty, like it. I set a camera. Now, one thing that you can do is set a photography studio type situation. So go to our grid. I'm gonna put down a bend. This is like a backdrop. But when you hit M, it essentially shifts the situation. In the bend SOP, you can also shift the axis. You can also hit B to kind of switch between all the different possibilities. I'm gonna go back to default one and hit M one more time. I'm gonna bend it 90 degrees. You can also compensate this thing, because if you go 180 degrees, as you can see, they're not equal. One thing that you can do is, in fact, adding this value. So let me show you. You can copy this and come in here, paste it, and divide it by 2. So now they're gonna be always equal. We also need more resolution, so I'm just gonna 50 by 50, or maybe even like 100 by 100. There we go. Pretty good. And you can also increase this depending on your setup. I think it works fine. And then at the end, I'm just gonna transform this a little bit behind. Something like this. Camera. Everything looks good. I'm gonna zoom in a little bit. On our grains, everything works fine. On our statue, I'm gonna set it to out render. I'm also gonna include a couple of groups in here. So let's put down group. Also group. This would be G, background. One would be statue. Down in material node. G. Statue. There's a weird group. It's coming. I guess by default it's coming from there. So we can also move that one. Yeah, let's do that. Down. With delete. You can also use a clean node. Pretty much the same thing. I'm just gonna remove the group. And let me also cancel this whole thing. We don't need that right now. Group blah blah blah. As I mentioned, geometries are sometimes a little bit weird when they're coming from programs that they use for scanning. Yep. I don't know why I can't speak today. It's weird. So let's just play this to frame 48. Maybe 72. Fine. Come out here. everything looks good, but the thing is, we're now using the color directly. What I like to do actually is I usually switch this to like I develop it like this. I kind of pick up colors in the viewport, but then when I get to the rendering section, I actually switch this to grayscale. Now, this way we only have a grayscale ramp, and it's much easier to control this in the engine, because this way you can actually get creative. You don't need to come back to the subs level to set up your colors. Let's set our materials. So we're going to go to the material tab. We're going to create RS map builder. We're going to need 3 materials: BG, statue, and brains. Recording. Good. Let's assign these materials. Let's assign statue. Let's assign G. And let's go back here. Let's go to our grains, and we don't need to jump inside. We're going to go to redshift. We're going to go to render, and we're going to set the grains, and we're also going to go to redshift particles. Check this render as particles, and I think we need to dial this down. I'm not sure. Maybe not. Probably it's going to work fine. Yeah. Also on our statue, since I know I'm going to tessellate it, and I'm also going to use displacements later, so let's just include. Now, I'm not going to really get into the lighting right now or the rendering because it's pretty normal. The only thing is we're going to use attributes and pretty normal stuff. So let's just do a really quick lighting setup. One light from here, one light from the other side, and maybe one light from here, sort of like a rim light. To camera, let's just check out our render. I'm gonna save it. I'm using redshift 3.0.63. I upgraded to 65 and I didn't like it. I think weird, the noiser didn't work well. I'm gonna use the older version, but it's still pretty new, so don't worry. I'm gonna use optics. We're using OCIO, and the only thing is I think we forgot to bring this one up. Yeah, just stop this real quick. Now if you remember on our object here, we need to actually bring it to this value as well. In fact, I think we have it. Yeah, no, we don't. Let me go back. Need to copy this. There we go, because that's where we set our ground and paste relative reference. There we go. Now it's collating correctly. Now you can actually set it up where it was initially, but then you kind of have to play with everything correct. And since if you look at it from here, it's not really straight, so you can play with it, rotate it. I just feel like this is easier. Go back to camera, go back to our render. Let's render it out. Let's see what we have. Right off the bat, it's actually pretty cool. I like it. I'm gonna go to material, go to grains. We're not gonna really worry about anything else except grains. Let's put down RS user data color. And we're gonna bring our CD. Let's just directly connect it. We need to refresh the IPR. There we go. Let's add a ramp. And let's use, I like Twilight. Let's just use that one. Now the colors look pretty good. I might let it go further a little bit. Get some more interesting colors in here, because if you remember, they're reacting to the age attribute. That's pretty cool. If you don't like it, you can actually come back here and set this to work on 4. And it will probably be brighter. There we go. And since we're getting a little bit of white, I'll probably go back to 72. Is this thing working? I don't think they're refreshing the icon. Okay, so one thing that you can do is go to your out, go to your Redshift, IPR, and you can check live sub updates. I like to switch this to advanced. I usually don't use automatic sampling, but let's just use it right now because it's fine. Go back to our grains. Now, when we refresh now, you can actually go back and forth your timeline. So you'll actually get to see update. There we go. Around here is fine. It's actually connected to the material. So we're going to use the diffuse color, but also I'm going to add some emission. So emission color, go to emission. I'm just going to bring it up to like 0.25. Just a tiny bit. As you can see, it's actually has a huge effect. This is 0.5. Maybe in fact 0.5. Better. We can play with it until we like it. This is a pretty cool color. Here's the thing, you can actually switch it. You can go to black body. It's pretty cool. If you're using black body, you should probably stick to like 0.25, maybe even 0.2. Yeah, that's better, I think. All right, you can also connect like noise to your roughness. You can make it rough. You can not do that. It's fine, up to you. Let's go to our background. Now, one thing that I like to do here is I want to put down a max on noise. And as you can see, we can actually see the background, but I still want to see the reflections, but I don't want to see the actual lights. Now, you can go to your light settings and uncheck this background, but then they're in the same same object, so you have to kind of separate them. Obviously, that's the normal way, but one thing that you can do is actually you can add a very tiny displacement to everything. And I mean, everything always has some sort of displacement, so it's actually more physically accurate as well. It's gonna go crazy now because nothing is correct. Wow. So I'm gonna check this, bring this to 0.002 maybe, and in here I'm going to switch it to FBM and maybe 0.2. Very tiny. Let's add the displacement, not visible at all, and we're going to connect the material as well, and it looks let me check my settings. I'm using these, so 0.0015 minus 0.5 and 0.5, and on the noise I'm using 0.1. Obviously it's not gonna resolve everything, so you still might want to move your lights so they're in better positions. You might want to actually bring them out. So this is this light. I'm gonna just move it out a little bit. Not that obvious. Maybe put it in here. Let's go to the other one. I still have to move that one because it's perfect. That's fine. 0.1. Also pretty good. It's not perfect. There's still a lot of work that we can do. We can put the light here and it will probably be acceptable, let's say. Obviously, one thing that you can do in here is adding some roughness to your backdrop, which will help a lot. So let's add 0.3 maybe. That looks pretty good. Place one light in here. I'm gonna place it kind of on the left side and switch to the first one. Bring it kind of to the right. Looks decent. Now maybe put one light up here so you have a bit of a light in the front as well. Usually helps with setup. Make sure you're not overexposing anything. And I mean, we're pretty much done. Also include a bokeh effect. I'm gonna save the scene because sometimes it crashes this way. 0.115. Let's place our focal point. Somewhere around here. 0.2 is fine. You can switch the colors as you like. Play with everything. Go to grains. Switch this to. Still kind of want to go with highlight. I just love it. There we go. It's cool. In the thumbnail, I'm actually using the black body, and also on my own setup, and the one you saw on YouTube. But I think right now this looks pretty cool. Let's just put the image to 1. And you can obviously play with the materials as well. Maybe you can use like copper. Might look cool. I don't know. It's up to you guys. You can just play with them as we've done before and mix them up, add some noises, use material blenders, all the nice stuff that we always do. Let's just put something very basic in here. I'm gonna put down a max on noise, and maybe just use something like, there we go. Really basic, nothing complicated. And also you can displacement and connect the displacement 0.005 maybe, and I like to keep -0.5 and 0.5. This essentially means your displacement won't be just towards outside. It's going to be sort of a little bit outside, a little bit inside. It will help the look. I think we usually tend to do that, but feel free to just stick to the normal one. Maybe 0.5 in the emission because it was a little bit too bright. And yep, that's our setting. I hope you guys like this one. I always say I want to keep my tutorials short, but I think this one also turned out really long. About an hour, so better than our 2-hour stuff. I hope you guys like this. As I mentioned, you can support me by buying my NFTs. I thank you guys. I've been getting a lot of messages from you guys. It's been awesome. And keep an eye out for the interview. I'm not sure if I'll post that one first or this one after that. I'm not sure what I'm gonna do. I guess we'll see. And yeah, thanks for joining me and have a nice day. Bye guys.